question is, how does President Obama's inauguration today set the stage for his second term? You know, a lot of people think second terms are destined for crisis and, in many cases, disaster. But I talked earlier with Douglas Brinkley, a presidential historian, who says the mythology of second-term problems is actually overrated.
This is a modern thinking largely because Richard Nixon certainly had a cursed second term, Watergate, you know, threat of impeachment and, you know, all that, driven out of office, resigning. And George W. Bush had a rough second term, particularly the economy dropped out in October of '08. But I could tell you just as many great second terms. That Franklin Roosevelt accomplished so much in his second term, it'll blind you what he did. Just working with an Interior Department and the CCC and Harold Ickes, you know, heading into World War II. You know, Dwight Eisenhower really got to solidify the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Interstate Highway, created NASA. Bill Clinton, I mean, what would Clinton's first term, if he only had one term, he wouldn't be able to brag about the surplus, which is his great legacy piece.
Are there things that presidents need to look out for because in a second term? Because you do hear people say there's a tendency to either get complacent or to get a little cocky and assume that, you know, I now have a free hand, I never have to face the voters again. Is that a legitimate danger?
Yeah, of course. And look, enthusiasm factors go down. The second inaugurals don't get the enthusiasm as a first. The opportunities are grand if you seize them. Climate change today is being talked about a lot. Will President Obama grab a hold of that, the rhetoric of climate change, the science of it, and use it in an inaugural or State of the Union? I'm not sure what can be done about it soon, but he might be able to claim something like that. Going to China in a second term and maybe doing a Nixon 72 bit of diplomacy. You don't want to do that in a first term. You start being seen too close to China. Try getting votes in Ohio and Wisconsin from auto workers.
Yeah, that's right. And there is this sense you get that whatever kind of grand visions President Obama may have had for his time in office, whatever time that was going to be, some of those had to be put on hold because he just did have to deal with the financial crisis that sucked a lot of the oxygen out of the room. Maybe that's not true in a second term.
Well, but you know, look, the one signature achievement in domestic policy, whether you like it or not, is Obamacare.
Yeah.
And it's going to be seen as a Medicaid or Medicare, Social Security, an entitlement, or it might become a birthright. Regardless, if he had lost President Obama, that thing would have been gone.
That's true.
By having a second term, he can solidify that. Also, I've written some on conservation, and these presidents don't like signing executive orders, say, to save a swamp or a desert or something, a national monument. Dwight Eisenhower, at the end of his second term, said, boy, I don't have much of a conservation legacy. So he created ANWR in Alaska. That's where it got signed in 1960 on the way out, you know. So you can use executive authority and do things from a legacy perspective that you wouldn't dare do if you had to run.
But I've always had the feeling it's not really true that second-term presidents don't care whether they're popular or not. I think they care very, very much because you're playing not for the next election, but for the history books, and the legacy and popularity with the people around the country matters an awful lot.
Couldn't agree more. What the public doesn't think about sometimes is that they never stop running, because these people, to be at top of the mountain, to be the snow leopard in politics, you're campaigning for your legacy the day you leave. You've got to fundraise for a presidential library, you're trying to write the $10 million memoir, you're trying to protect your reputation, you're trying to create an interesting post-presidency. These people keep going. They're pros, and no ex-president. Only if you're, I mean, some presidents died in office, so they don't have that. Others are senior. I mean, the time Eisenhower left the presidency, he wanted to go to Gettysburg. He had run Supreme Allied Commander of World War II. Ronald Reagan was our oldest president. He was ready. He had health issues to go back and retire in California and let others do it. On the legacy front, in recent times, the two presidents who've spun legacy the best are John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan. I teach university class at Rice, and my students, all of them want to do papers on Kennedy or Reagan, and in the end, they kept going. Even Camelot and Reaganology, you know,
Reagan National Airport.
And they did a good job. Presidents that don't get into that well don't fare well in history. It's a constant fight.